You are listening to Inside the Notes. I'm your host, Erica Block. Here we have the opportunity to listen to the stories that connect our musical family tree. First-hand accounts of performances, musicians, and mentors that shape the way we listen, learn, and teach. In today's episode, we are chatting with Grace Browning, principal harp of both the Rochester Philharmonic and the Santa Fe Opera. Welcome.
Thank you, Erica. I'm so happy to be here. I love your podcast. Wow,
Thank you.
huge
Thank
fan.
you.
And I love you. So thank you for having
It's
me.
perfect. Match made in heaven. So I just saw that you performed the Ravel introduction in Allegro with your
Yes.
orchestra. Tell me about it. How did it feel? Was it the first thing back? What was it like to kind of get back in the saddle?
Wow. Well, yeah, I guess we are pretty much on the anniversary of the arrival of the pandemic. So that going back to work that week was particularly notable. I've been really fortunate with RPO that we've been actually pretty much performing the whole time. At first, of course, we were just literally in our living rooms performing live streams in
Yeah,
March, April, May. Then finally we moved outdoors and we were able to, play with a couple other people, and we could even have people in person, which was amazing. And then come the fall, we really weren't sure what was going to happen, but again, I'm so grateful that RPO and a lot of orchestras have figured out just how to stream, how to record, and to keep the music going. And just the fact that we're able to do it even socially distant and every couple of months has been amazing.
that's awesome.
Yeah, but it's been yeah, so but this was cool because the Ravel. Now I could talk for like years about Maurice Ravel. Also,
Yes.
I teach a pedagogy and repertoire class at University of Denver, and my students, of course, like, so we were all playing this piece this week. So I was like, okay, we're going to talk all about Ravel. But he wrote this piece originally just for basically string quartet, flute, clarinet, and harp, but it can be augmented to a full orchestra. So this was nice because, again, we're doing all small numbers. So it was
Yeah.
just us, no conductor.
Awesome. Awesome.
And that's probably been the biggest takeaway from this whole pandemic is that our orchestra is now more self-sufficient and musician focused than ever before. Like getting to do this sort of chamber music stuff is just amazing. It's so
That's
unique.
incredible. So
Yeah.
has this been an opportunity for the artistic director to come up with these new programming ideas, or are you getting to put your
Mm.
input in and say,
Yeah.
Ravel, how does it
Yeah.
work?
Well, it's interesting you asked because we've actually been transitioning right now from our former music director Ward Stair
Mhm.
to our new music director Andreas Delfs. And in fact, I get to meet him and work with him for the first time tomorrow.
Awesome. So
So excited.
exciting.
He is wonderful. I had never had the pleasure of working with him before, but he was the music director at Milwaukee Symphony and St. Paul Chamber Orchestra, and he happens to actually be up here already. He lives in upstate New York.
Wow.
He's just absolutely wonderful. But yeah, there was definitely a period where we were sort of without a leader, just because of the pandemic and not being in the same place. And so it actually was wonderful because it created a great opportunity for the musicians to come together, to create sort of a shared vision and to share that, of course, with our management and to work directly with them to curate concerts. So
That's
it
really
was
exciting.
it was unlike anything before. I mean, I went from, just sort of being the harpist to being like the curator of the musician weekly live stream series. And then when we went outdoors, I was doing the camera work and hiring tech guys. And, I never would have had this opportunity to do that before. But it's fun to get to sort of stretch what your usual job is. Usually I'm just, yeah, I'm in the back, but it's pretty fun to get to be more of a producer.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of awesome potential in the orchestra now that there's been kind of a new birth and a new synergy of the musicians really getting to know each other better, truly.
Yes.
That when
Oh
you
my
go
gosh.
back to being in the larger setting, that's going to really, bring some really interesting new angles to your performing.
It's amazing, right, and so the Ravel was super unique because then again, here we are now back to work, not with anyone telling us what to do, but ourselves. We w
Mhm.
w it wa just a self-governed chamber rehearsal. So, it's great, but it's also interesting because, we have some strong, unique personalities, so
Yeah.
we are definitely getting to learn so much more about each other, and I have such a deeper appreciation for my colleagues, and yeah, but for sure, the Ravel is just such a tremendous piece, and it was written, to show off what the modern pedal harp can do. And so it's such a treat when you sort of see it through that lens,
Mhm.
really exploring what the instrument can do, because people are always surprised. Always, they never expect the harp to be so like strong and full and brilliant and maybe even aggressive,
Yes.
and like we have a lot of colors, so it's just so nice to be able to, yeah, to have a piece that really showcases that.
Absolutely. I feel like I wanna go in, like, 9 different directions with questions, but I can't help but take that up. What was the opportunity that you had to hear the potential of the harp, like, at the beginning when you were
Mm.
little? Did you get to hear a live performance, or is it a recording where you were like, "Holy cow, I had no idea"?
What's really funny is that I actually didn't hear a harp really consciously until after my mom suggested that I play. I was a musical child, and I played piano and I sang in the choir, so I was exposed to music, and I'd probably heard harp music somewhere,
Yeah.
maybe in some sort of recording of Pocket Bells Canon or what have you. But my yeah, basically, sort of on a whim, my mom came up with the idea, and for me, it was really the moment when I moved from the little folk harp. I had a little Irish folk harp, 32 strings, 3 feet
Oh.
tall. I still have it, by the way. It's adorable, and
Aw,
my niece plays it, my little baby niece.
awesome.
So moving from that beautiful but tiny and rather limited instrument to the full size, well, a fuller size pedal harp was just a whole yeah, a whole new world. I
Yeah.
mean, first of all, you have, yes, way more strings, but the biggest gain is that the harp is, in fact, a very chromatic instrument, very
Mhm.
flexible, very versatile. We can play with anyone, we can play any genre, anywhere, really. Solo, with choir, and or yeah, in a sea of other harps.
Yeah,
There's just,
exactly.
and it was actually harp ensemble. That was my first ensemble experience. And
Cool.
that really was a game. I don't know about you, but for me, I felt really actually isolated when I first
Mhm.
started to play harp. It was just me by myself in my living room. And then
Mhm.
finally I got to play with other harpists and then eventually in an orchestra. And again, it was with my new harp, and it was actually the summer that we moved from New Jersey to Washington D.C. And that's when I met a new teacher, and that was like the veil was lifted, and it was like, this is what orchestra is. And I
Yeah.
was like, whoa, what is this
Wow.
crazy musical rodeo?
Yeah, exactly.
I just
Like,
loved it. Yeah,
that's really cool because I feel like so often most people's introduction to harp is beautiful background music or a
Yeah,
wedding or something like that, but that's not even touching like
I
an
know.
eighth of its potential, and real harp and what you're capable of is so overwhelming that I
Oh,
wondered
right.
if you were finally like, "What?" when you
Yeah.
could hear what they can do. It's
Yes,
astounding.
that's right, and it does speak to, I think we all experience this somewhat when you're first starting an instrument. You're not maybe gonna reap as many of the rewards, or you won't hear as, maybe the sound that you want for a while, which doesn't
Mhm.
mean that it's not coming, and it doesn't mean that the work you're doing isn't beautiful, but it just isn't, you just need to be a little patient. And then when you get to that point where you can even look back to a few weeks ago or a year ago and say, wow, then I was doing this, and now I'm doing this, then you feel tremendous, tremendous progress.
Absolutely. All right, we
Yeah.
need to keep going down this road because I have a bunch of
Yes,
harp questions.
go.
The pedal harp or the pedals really
Yeah.
kind of brought chromaticism into it and modernized it. But since then, what improvements have happened to harp? Like what modernizing elements have there been that's really changed it, if any, like maybe in the last
Oh
50
gosh.
years or so?
Yes, that's a great question. So basically, Our full-size pedal harp, otherwise known as the double action pedal harp, which basically means we have pedals going in all directions, flat, natural, sharp. We can do anything.
Right.
That was like the, early 1800s when, Erard came out with this model.
Mhm.
And then Lion and Healy took it up in the 1890 or so. And then they have been making harps literally for over, 120, 30 years. So in that time, there have been other harp makers like in France and also Italy who have also invested in um, electroacoustic instruments. And
Ooh,
that is super dope. And that's something I
wow.
really want to try. They're
Yeah.
usually painted blue or some exotic color.
Cool.
And you can, yeah, hook them up to an amp. And it's like the most amazing sound between sort of an electric guitar meets, yeah, harp. You can even add pedal distortion. There's a harpist in LA. She's a good friend of mine, Lara Samoji. She's been playing in a lot of movie soundtracks recently, but she has a collection of like 300 different like crazy sounding pedals, and she
Wow.
can do any and all sorts of effects, reverb, echo, and it's just totally expanded the color palettes of the instrument.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So, since the strings take up like an enormous quantity of the actual instrument, is brand to brand, does it matter or does everybody kind of flock to one
Yeah.
style or is there different material or thicknesses or how does it work?
Right. So, yeah, most of our strings come from the same maker. There's basically like sort of a monopoly. There's, Bow Brand, and they make our strings pretty much. And there are different kinds of strings, of course. A lot of people might not know that we play on gut strings
Mhm.
fundamentally. And I know that sounds gross, but it's actually they're great generally, and they have a beautiful warm sound. You also have nylon strings, which are, plastic. You usually use those on the higher strings. So that's probably going to be the biggest difference in texture and sound is if you
Mhm.
have nylon versus gut. But between different instrument models, I mean, yeah, I guess I am partial to Lion and Healy. I've certainly, I've had their instruments for most of my life. They do produce, I would say, most of the world's harps, which is great. And again, we're just so lucky to have them in Chicago. We can actually go, and anyone in Chicago can go there, go to the
Incredible.
Lion and Healy factory when they reopen to the public, and you can take a tour and see how they make harps because it is the most fascinating stuff. You would it I mean, literally just a few like random facts I'll just spout out of here about this crazy instrument. Okay. So first, it's 85 pounds. Second, it is 6 feet tall. 7-foot pedals, of course. And there are 2,000 pounds of pressure on the soundboard.
Wow.
Um, and what people don't know is that the inside of the harp is filled with mechanisms and levers and
Wow.
literally metal rods that basically connect the pedals, the foot pedals, to little mechanisms next to the strings that can either lengthen or um, shorten them to get different pitches. So
Right.
basically, just like that, you move your foot on a pedal, and literally about 100 different pieces need to move simultaneously to make that happen.
Wow. What is the repair budget like? Is it heavy duty when you have to go get
Yeah.
something fixed?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, if something really bad happens, you just have to ship your harp back out to the factory, and they
Yeah.
they take care of it. But thank goodness we have some really wonderful harp technicians, harp regulators. My favorite in the whole world, his name, he goes by the Harp Doc. Peter
Awesome.
Wiley. He's based in
Yes.
Albuquerque, but these harp technicians travel all over the world, at
Right.
least all over the country to make their living. So they'll go to Dallas for one week, and then Rochester the next week, and then Iowa.
With the strings or with the instrument, like,
Mhm.
handling 2,000 pounds of pressure, does that mean they don't have a very long life expectancy, or can they last generation
Yeah.
after generation, or are you, like, 10, 15 years and you gotta get a new one?
Yeah, so that's the thing. I really often compare like the purchase and maintenance of a harp to that of a car. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, in terms of lifespan, definitely we're not talking anything near that of a violin or whatever,
Right.
because yeah, it is basically machinery on the inside. But
Mhm.
if it is well maintained and, you do everything you can do, you could definitely get a harp to sound good for 50 years, maybe 100, but it's just gonna have basically what's gonna happen is that the organic part of the instrument will start to I'm not gonna say decay, but it will start to warp just a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah.
because of the pressure that you're yeah,
Yeah.
and so and the inside, unless you replace it, which you can do, they're just gonna get a little creaky, so so yeah, it's different than what one might expect.
Yeah, it's fast it's
Mm.
kind of like classical guitars and woodwinds, like anything that's putting
Right?
pressure or moisture, they just the
I
wood can't handle it
know.
after a while.
But thank God the harp is a lot more sturdy than it used to be. I think that's another one of the biggest things that has changed. There's this horrible quote that's like, "Harpists spend half their life tuning and the other half playing out of tune." I'm like, "Oh my god,
Aw.
that's so rude." Uh, and, like, it's only partially true, okay? So, no, but
Exactly.
really, it's gotten a lot better. I mean, this harp, this harp that I have behind me here is I've had it for 20 years. It has been all over the country with me in all sorts of ridiculous temperatures, and she is just like a Mack truck, you know?
That's
She's
awesome.
good to go. So,
Just hanging in
I'm
there.
grateful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I feel like the ins and outs of each individual instrument is so unique to the instrument, and it's an entire universe of technicians and
Yes.
brands, and every time you step into a new world like that, it's amazing to see all the opinions people have and the
Mm.
wheres and whys and how they do it. It's fascinating.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a very personal thing, but so a lot of people
Hmm.
ask, they're like, "So do you always move your harp for a performance?" And it's like, I mean, ideally, if you can bring yours, great. But yeah, we don't fly them on planes. We can ship them, but it's really, really expensive. So generally, we will either drive them or just borrow someone's harp and hope that it's close enough.
Wow.
But it's been tough, for auditions. Um,
Yeah.
like, when I took the RPO audition, I flew up from Dallas really early in the morning. I couldn't get up there, I couldn't drive, and I played on someone else's harp. And then
Wow.
another person's harp for the finals. So it's sort of like
Wow.
you're just hoping. I mean, they will tell you, like, you're gonna play a Lion and Healy Model 30, but you don't know how old it is, you don't know what the strings are like, you don't know what it's been through, right?
Wow, that's
I
astounding.
know.
I may say it's almost worse than piano for that, because auditions,
Right. Yeah, because
that's
it's not
really
like, okay, you're
intense.
getting a Steinway, then
Right.
But, yeah, it keeps it interesting.
Wow. Wow. So let's go right
Yeah.
into orchestral auditions. I'm fascinated, to know about your your audition rep.
Oh.
Since you have so much rep available to you that is not orchestral, is it something that, after being in orchestra or playing in the opera, that you start to see some of your excerpts, or are the excerpts kind of like independent of the actual
Mhm.
rep that you really play?
That's a great question. I know there are always excerpts that we keep practicing, and it's like, "Are we ever actually gonna play
Yeah,
these? Are we
exactly.
just learning these to torture ourselves?" I
Yes.
felt that way with Magic Fire music, and now I've played Die Valkyrie twice, so I'm like, "Okay, it was worth it. Yes."
Yes. Yes.
So those but again, not many people get to be in a section of 6 harps.
Right.
Once I even got to be in a section of 8 in Aspen
Wow.
with my teacher,
Wow.
Nancy Allen, leading the pack, things you'll
Cool.
never forget. But yeah, it's some really interesting rep. My background was really originally more symphonic. I fell in love with
Mhm.
symphonic music, youth orchestra, right? Like, pictured at an
Yeah.
exhibition in Pines of Rome. I was like, yes, this is it. This is all I want to do. And I was really close to getting an orchestra job after New World. But instead, I ended up getting the Dallas Opera job. And that was a whole new world of rep. I had literally only played
Yeah.
2 operas in my life. One of them was La Boheme, thank God. Um,
Yeah.
and it really kicked my ass, actually. And I sorta liked it though. I was like, "Whoa, okay, I'll come back to that maybe." And then I
Yeah.
also did an Oliver Newson opera, Higgledy Piggledy
Interesting.
Pop, also
Interesting.
incredibly challenging, but in both cases,
Absolutely.
I was like, "That was interesting. Yeah, I'd do it again." So, for this audition, it was, yeah, the usual. We have Lucia di Lammermoor. Oh gosh,
Mhm.
gorgeous, cadenza.
Mhm.
And then, they did ask for La Boheme, so that was like, "Yes, I actually know this." And I think
Yeah.
the big difference for me in that audition, what would also help me with the performance psychology component, which has always been a thing for me, was getting into a more theatrical place, a more emotional sort of character place where I'm thinking about the opera, I'm thinking about the
Mhm.
story and how I am a messenger for that. And so, how fun to play, pyom, 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 in the beginning of third act, and to imagine that, the snow falling rather than, oh my gosh, they're listening to me and
You're
deciding my fate right now.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, and the visualization is such a key component. So is that something that you eventually came to, or did somebody
Yeah.
kind of help usher you into that area of
Oh,
thinking about it?
I had a lot of help, yes. Well, for sure, being at New World was, an amazing, resource. I got to work with, performance psychologist Don Green and
Oh,
Noah Kagiyama, the, curator of the Bulletproof Musician. I'm sure you've
mhm.
probably interviewed him. Have you interviewed him yet?
I haven't gotten to interview him, but
Oh,
so many people
I'm
adore
sure he's
him.
on your I know, yeah. Oh my gosh,
He's on my
yeah.
hit list.
Yeah, mine too, right? Anytime I can have with him is great. I also took his course in, performance psychology for educators, and I love
Ooh,
that because, again, it doesn't just have to be for, like, the super duper professionals. Like, we all deserve to be happy when we make music. We all deserve
yes.
to experience that joy, without shooting ourselves in the foot. And certainly we've all been there. So, I mean, I learned so much from them over the years. And again, just, the biggest thing too is, that I can't emphasize enough is that it's not just like, you know, a quick fix. Let me tell you. I mean, knowing
Yeah,
oneself and, being able to really monitor my self-talk and to say, what am I saying to myself right now? How is that triggering me? And
yeah,
how can I reverse that or change my messaging so I can be in a more positive place? So that took a lot. Yeah. It's like a muscle,
yeah,
and, and
absolutely.
if I don't use it for a while, my negative self-talk comes back and
Yeah, yeah.
what's going on? And I have to work on it and I have to be really mindful. It's hard.
And I feel like an audition situation, or at least like the preparation leading up to an audition, it's so easy to get into the headspace of like, well, this isn't technically there yet, or I'm not where I should have been by this landmark. And, everything's always
Oh,
so planned out leading up to it that getting yourself into the theatrical aspect of it, of course, is the most
yeah.
helpful and the most challenging to actually do.
Yeah, that's huge. So definitely developing a plan more or less for what you're going to do. I
Hmm.
mean, and here's the thing because so much that we can't control in any well in life
Yeah.
and particularly in auditions performances, right? So what can you
Yeah.
control? And for me, it's the moment before each piece, having that just 10 seconds, 20 seconds to center. Um, and definitely learning how to center it definitely took a lot of practice, and that's one of those muscles as well. But basically, just coming back to my breath, releasing
Yeah.
tension because that tension for me and anxiety always are locked hand in hand.
Yep.
So, and not just any breathing, right? I've been talking a lot about breath recently with my students, and it's literally dumbfounding how different it feels between breathing with your shoulders as we are normally sort of maybe breathing versus our diaphragm,
Yeah.
diaphragmatic breathing, which is actually supposed to be how we breathe. That's how we're supposed to
Right.
be doing it. And when we don't breathe that way, the reverse breath, it actually sends a signal to our brain that's like fight or flight.
Right.
So if we're doing that before or during a performance, well, gosh, okay, yeah, you're not going to feel great. But if you come back here, oh,
Yeah.
yes, the belly.
Yeah.
So, so again, mixing a lot of physical cues with yes, mental cues. So and again with my students, we try a lot of different things. It's again not different from finding a great therapist. It's like
Yeah.
you gotta find something that works for you. Whether it is if it is just like a saying like keep the flow, or something really encouraging and open. Or if it is an image like, yes, the snow or water, or for me, it's often actually the sound of the music that I'm about to play. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
it's probably
awesome.
I think we all do that somewhat, right? We have to sort of get on the horse musically, like
Yeah,
in our
yeah.
head before we start playing.
Absolutely. And so often these big moments in the piece are deep into it. If you were in the performance, you would have had 15 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever to be in the piece before it's your big moment. But
Oh,
in the excerpt, it just
yes.
goes. So you have to like find a way to get into the piece before you try and
Oh,
spit out this excerpt.
that's right. Exactly. And I just always tell people too, you got to really be patient with this process, because it takes a while to let your body go to that place. You can't rush it.
Hmm.
Yeah, all right, I feel calm. Let's go. Like,
Yeah.
you really got to wait. And it's hard for me because, I am like super ADHD. It's hard for me to sit still. But the more that I can commit to that sort of stillness, the easier it is for you to hear that singing voice in your head. And when you
Hmm.
focus on that, the other crazy stuff going on in there just sort of falls to the background.
Yeah.
And so that's been a game changer for me. Yeah, for sure.
I love that, and I love the thought that those couple seconds between the excerpts is actually your time, like an opportunity to be in control of that,
Yes.
because the
Yes.
feeling always is once you walk out, none of it is in control and the whole thing is chaos and you're just hanging on, and then at the end you're like, "Did I make it? What did it happen?" But to think that, let's say that an excerpt doesn't go well. Well, the next space is your space again. You get to have that back and then you try again. That's really
Oh my gosh.
awesome.
Yes. And recovery is also hard.
Yep.
Don Green talks about having an emergency cue.
Cool.
How can
I
what do
love
you need,
that.
and it's just a few basic steps, but first of all, I love this. He says, number 1, accept the mistake.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up, because of course you're going to be like, "Oh god, why did I do that?" And like you want to go and
Yeah.
punish yourself and, flagellate, and you're
Yes.
like, "No." Right? Accept it.
Yes.
Then number
Yes.
2, release tension.
Right.
Then
Right.
3, yeah, like breathe, release tension. And then basically just commit to playing at a reasonable level. I love this too, because
That's
we
good.
make a mistake and then we're like, "Oh god, now I have to do something amazing." So, you know,
Right.
no you don't. Just play. No one's expecting
Yeah.
perfection. That doesn't exist.
Right.
And just let's just get rid of that word. Can we just call it optimal, okay? Because
Yeah.
that's the word they use, and I just love that now, because it's just that pressure is just it's just so much.
Yes, you're so right, and it is so hard to not like insist upon yourself of better than you could ever dream to make up for this atrocity, which probably no one barely noticed, only
I
like
know.
you and a couple people. But you're like, oh well, now
Oh
it has
my
to be the best
gosh.
I've ever played, but
I
and
know.
that's impossible in the headspace that you're currently
Now I
living
will
in.
be Pierre Jamais.
Exactly,
Yeah. Like,
exactly.
no,
It's
you're
too
yourself. I
much.
know, right. Totally. So,
That's really
it's
cool.
really a crazy experience.
What about in that same vein? Well, I guess my first question is, in harp auditions for orchestral situations, are there enough of you that you need a bunch of rounds?
Yes.
Okay, go.
Yes, I know, quite a lot actually. Now, let's see. The last audition I took was Milwaukee. I was runner up for that out of 88 people.
Okay, so that's just as horrible as all the rest of us.
Believe it
So,
or not. Yeah, I know. It's surprising because you think, okay, there can't be that many, harpists, but uh and this is actually, believe it or not, after pre-screening. So,
wow.
yeah, the world of harp is growing. It's really exciting. well, yeah, I can go into the sort of how we've sort of grown from Europe, and but now the American harp scene is really like just exploding. Amazing players from all over. So it's good, but it does mean that it's actually pretty competitive. So,
Yeah.
but in my Dallas Opera job, for example, I mean, it was supposed to be 3 rounds, but for some reason, well, I think because the rep was hard, opera rep is hard, and it's not a full time job. They didn't have tons of applicants. And that day, we got an email from the personnel manager the morning that was like, we had a few extra cancellations, so it's going to be shorter. And I was like, this might be
Hmm.
good. And then
Yes.
by the time I got there were actually only 15 people. And then we went right to the finals. Well,
Ooh.
yeah, basically, yeah, the finals, and then they were unscreened.
Wow.
Yeah,
So that's very unique because 80 to 100 is more what I was wondering about. And I
yeah.
always am curious with the mental preparation. It's one thing to get out of the first round, but then you also have to mitigate the excitement because you're
Mhm.
like, oh my God, I did it. Oh my God, I'm going to the next one. Have you found a way
Totally.
to like keep yourself centered
Oh,
as you're kind of making your way through the mess
yeah.
so that you aren't a total ball of
Whew.
energy nerves by the finals?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I mean, first of all, I at this point, I just sort of accept that there's going to be a lot of adrenaline. So,
Yeah.
sort of yes, coming to terms with that and like not getting upset or like mad or surprised about it, but like being like, okay, yeah, whoop, this is that feeling. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Um, and then channeling it into like, okay, and what can I do right now? What do I have? What is your process, right? So
Yeah.
another thing, I'll only say his name probably like 40 more times, but Don Green talks about this sort of what kind of focus you have in terms of like narrow and close to you, or in terms of more open and broad. And that when from the minute you go into those doors, you're not, looking around like, hey, where's the party? You are really just focused on your bubble, and yes, who you need to interact with, but, um, just almost right from the beginning, imagining almost like a protective sort of sphere. I have
Yeah.
a lot of friends who like to do this even before they go out on stage. That's another great centering technique, is putting some sort of a force field, or a ring of fire even around yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's definitely that. I mean, the other big thing for me is just finding ways to, like, I'm very extroverted. I do love seeing my harp friends. I really,
Mhm.
we don't get to see each other that much, but you know how it is. It's like, hey, what's up? What's up? Yep, gonna put on my headphones. See you later. Okay, thanks. And so that's a big thing. Just sort of keeping your energy as steady as possible. I
Mhm.
definitely do sometimes take naps
Yeah.
in really weird places.
Yeah.
I slept at sort of a ladies' changing room on my harp covers. They make for a great impromptu sleeping bag. So
I'm sure, nice and cushiony, extra big. That's
yeah,
awesome.
fairly
You can, like,
clean.
climb in them.
Yeah.
Fairly.
So,
That's awesome.
yeah, and then, you got the snacks and stuff. I mean, I always tell my students, it's like, I mean, we're athletes, really, so we need to basically plan for our audition day just like race day,
Yeah.
Um, and the same sort of thing in terms of, maybe tapering your physical practice the week before. I mean, yeah, run-throughs, maybe, for sure,
Mhm.
maintenance and whatnot, but the rest moving more to mental,
Yeah.
and then and just conserving all the energy, because you're going to need it. You're going to go
Yep.
into the depths of those sort of, what am I thinking of, those sort of extra.
Yeah, like, energy silos. Like
Yes. Into the reserves. Yes. You're going to
yes.
you're going to poke into those,
Yeah.
but it's hard because I think generally we want to play more. We want to just be like, I always, my students are like, "Yeah, I just need to spend more
Just need to play
time.
one
I
more
just
time.
need to just like get it in my
Yeah.
fingers." I'm like, "No, no, no. Your fingers are fine. Get it, like, just
Yeah.
like move it up here and
Yeah.
see what you can visualize, see how much is still, because the more that you can sharpen that mental image, the more that it becomes your reality,
Yes. How cool is that? Really,
right?
if we think about it from a human perspective, it's really insane, but the
It's
clearer it is, the
it's
better it
it's
is.
some psycho-cybernetics
Yeah,
goodness
it
right
really
there, and,
is.
that's a great book, and that's, again, what a lot of this stuff Don Green is based on is just that,
Yeah.
yeah, what you see and what you say to yourself, it becomes your
Yeah.
that's sort of what you manifest. I mean, and it might not always immediately or as clearly as you maybe want or think it should be, but yeah, I mean, all these situations, they really just put you they put you through the ringer in a way, but I'm always grateful for it. Again, even when it doesn't work out. The
Yeah.
last few auditions, I
Yeah.
took 3 auditions last year and I did well in some and not in others. And, but it was great to just be able to say, okay, well, I played the way I wanted to.
Yes.
And that's really all that you can do. And
Absolutely.
I never thought it would work out. I kept thinking, "Oh my gosh, it's too easy. Like someone's just going to hear me and they're going to want me for an orchestra. Are you kidding?" But then it happens. You just keep doing it and it happens.
It's so cool. It's so cool. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the parentage of American harp playing and who it came from and who were the core teachers that kind of started making the successful students. Like how has American harp kind of
Mm.
unfolded?
Oh, well, it's such an amazing story. I mean, basically, when people think of the two main schools of harp and how it came to the U.S., they think of the Salzedo school and the Grangeny school. So Carlos Salzedo and Marcel Grangeny were two really, really wonderful, amazing harpists, composers, teachers, everything who came from Grangeny came from France and Salzedo came from the Basque region. And basically, Grangeny came over and started teaching at Juilliard, and Salzedo came over and started teaching at Curtis. So that's awesome, and we really have both of them to thank hugely for this.
Mhm.
And then, of course, there have been many other harpists who've gone over to Europe, and that's because that's really where this started, right? We
Right.
got all of our stuff from Europe, pretty much. So they came over, and what's really interesting is that for a while it was perceived that Salzedo and Grangeny were like, you know, I don't know, sort of enemies or that, they opposed each other. And I
Mhm.
think maybe it was just some natural rivalry between, colleagues at the time and
Right.
who knows what else, but it's amazing because it really infiltrated our education system tremendously.
Interesting.
So it was like a thing, like maybe this teacher won't accept you because you don't have your elbows up, you know.
Uh-huh.
And that is, yeah, that's just, it's tough, it's tough because
Yeah.
yes, there are some technical elements that you just need no matter what school you're in, right? Your elbows need to be up
Yeah.
at least a little bit. You need to close your
Yeah.
fingers and your thumb needs to be high. Okay, those are like the
Right.
three big things. But there are a lot of different ways to do that, and we have different bodies, and
Yeah.
and not to mention these two players were men. So, what works for them might not work exactly for everyone else. And
Exactly.
so I actually think both of them really understood that. But at the time, there was a huge need for structure in American harp pedagogy. We didn't really have a system, and
Mhm.
there were a lot of openings for harpists, the NBC orchestra and, all these radio
Yeah.
orchestras and city symphonies popping up all over the place. And they needed harpists, not just anyone who could play, but like really good harpists. Because you need to be strong
Yeah.
and have endurance if you're going to play not
Mhm.
only symphonies but opera. I mean, my
Yeah.
gosh, even at the top of my game. It's exhausting.
Exactly.
So Salzedo developed perhaps. I mean, again, both of them just wrote tons of our repertoire, etudes, everything. But Salzedo particularly was focused on conditioning. Like you need to do your daily dozen exercises,
Cool.
and
Yeah.
that is great. Except of course, then if you're going to do exercises, then you need to stretch too, right? Well, they didn't really know
Right.
about that then, so a lot of people got
Got hurt.
tendonitis, but no, it's a risk in no matter what instrument, of course. But
Yeah.
I think we're at a place now where we're realizing that again, we're better having both of them to learn from, and
Exactly.
since then, of course, even more harpists from Europe have come over, and vice versa. And so, it's really not quite as strict, but it's been really cool to see how these two men, though, how their students then became teachers, and I was able to
Yeah.
study with those teachers. So that is the coolest thing about this, pedagogy in the music world. I'm sure for you as well, is just
Yes.
how that tradition is carried on. Their legacy is carried on through your teacher and then you.
Absolutely.
I
It's
mean,
amazing. It's the whole family tree thing. I
yeah.
think it's one of my favorite elements to it because it is so family oriented and you hear from your teacher what their teacher told them and the
Oh,
stories that passed down and then everything makes more sense.
I mean, it's amazing. I just love exactly like getting to hear like so I'll text my teacher like, "Hey, I'm going to play Granjani's Rhapsody in a recital tonight. Like, do you have anything that, like a little story that I could share or whatever?" And she's like, "Yeah, he always said that actually in this case I don't think I have a great story to tell you, sorry, but oh, I let you on. I didn't have anything. Anyway, yeah, no, it's just it helps so much having the context. I mean, my gosh, it's
Yes.
everything. It's absolutely
It
everything.
is.
Ugh,
It is, and it's so cool when the pedagogy is young enough that you might only be 2 generations away from the beginning or, for winds, it's
yeah.
Tabuto, and so,
Mm.
there's still Tabuto direct students walking this earth, sharing all of that information, and it really puts it all into perspective
Oh,
when you can talk to someone who was sat with him
yeah,
and
who,
right there or
studied
heard him play.
their music with them too. That was a huge
Exactly.
it's just like, I mean, I'm like, "Oh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Someone open a window," you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just it's mind-boggling. So I love that. I actually spent like 2 hours in Sibley Music Library yesterday. It is the oldest music library in the country, and it is here,
Wow.
in Rochester. So because I'm
Yeah.
a community member, I get to go there, and I'm just like, "Oh my gosh," and just going through there and seeing how much of this repertoire, whose hands it passed through, literally seeing them having
Absolutely.
checked it out, you know? I mean,
Yeah, and you're like, "Ugh."
Eileen Malone checked out the Grangeni aria, my gosh. It's just like it's so beautiful. So I love that.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so in that same vein, I feel like just experiencing these people, experiencing these teachers, and participating in that, it's always so mind blowing. Um, can you think of a concert that you attended, anything, any instrument, anything, where you left just being like, "That is how you do it. That was amazing." Something that really inspired you to, and hearing the
Oh.
artistry.
Oh, for harpist? Yes.
Or anybody, harpist or an
Oh.
other, but anything that just was like, that's it."
Wow. Hmm. Yep. Well, I mean, gosh, I gotta tell you, well, most recently, I never thought I'd say this, but I was blown away by a performance by my student. I know it's gonna sound this is not a like a humble brag or anything. It was like truly when someone shows up and does the work and commits to, that inner voice. We did a lot of
Mhm.
this work together of like life, there's always going to be all of these things that come at you, and how can you
Yep.
steer the course, and I was just, just blown away when you see someone actually just do it, to step out of their own way for a minute
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
clear the way. But
yeah.
I mean, but I'll say, last year, right before the pandemic, you know, I still think that one of the most sensational harpists in terms of someone who's stretching the instrument's bounds, would be Alexander or Sasha Boldachev. He is a wonderful, wonderful Russian Swiss harpist who basically plays everything from like Red Hot Chili Peppers to
Cool.
Petrushka on the solo harp. No looping, no layering, just him literally just I mean, and the fusion of genres, not to mention the ability, like his Petrushka is so funny. There's this, that's that part of the piece. Da da dun 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 da da da. It's
Yep.
supposed to be like a hurdy-gurdy or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
He goes up and pinches the top of the string of the harp. Dun, dun, I mean, it's like, oh, I mean,
Wow.
I've just never seen anyone make so much use of the instrument, and I guess that's just something that really excites me because it's like, gosh, I mean, we are not anymore this like, oh, in the shadows, like this quiet little parlor instrument. Like we are fierce
Yeah,
and we are
no.
everywhere. And did you see the New York Times article, How the Harp Got Hip?
I did not, but I'm gonna look it up. That's
It came
amazing.
out this week. And I
Amazing.
mean, like, and some of my friends were in it too, which was so cool. And that's a whole nother thing we could totally talk about, which is like what social media is doing, especially for the harp world, because everything is now
S
like really magnified in the best way.
Yeah,
Not to mention, we have some really amazing black artists who are representing the harp world in all sorts of new genres. Brandy Younger, who's also a composer, and my colleague Angelica Hairston is just a sensational harpist, also an advocate for outreach and education, and just so it's really incredible. The article also featured my good friend Kristen Tosco, who is based in Canada, and she has literally developed millions of followers on TikTok. A harpist, a
wow.
classical harpist. And now
That's
she
amazing.
plays everything, but the reason why she went viral, at least the first time, was that she transcribed this awesome Zelda song. And she tagged, all of the video game Zelda, at whatever.
Yeah,
And this community was just blown away. And they all shared it. And now
cool.
they basically are making these requests like every every day, like, please play James Bond 007. Please play the theme from Barney. I mean, and she's like actually going through and like doing it. And it's just so cool to see
Awesome.
people noticing this instrument and its new capabilities.
Yeah, yeah, it's astounding instrument, and it just got, pigeonholed,
Yeah.
like, for a long time as being a wedding thing, and then now it's like, look at all of the amazing stuff that you guys are
I
capable
know, right?
of.
I'm
It's
like, so
incredible.
what are all the other associations, right? So like weddings, like I mean, yes, angels. There's like the old school, like
Yeah,
18th century, 19th century, like all those paintings, right? Of like women
yeah,
sort of like
yeah,
awkwardly playing with their pinkies. Fun fact,
yeah, yeah,
the
exactly.
harpists do not use their pinkies. Not well, not anymore at least. But it looks
But angel oil paintings only use their pinkies.
and the other finger's optional. I don't know. It just
Yeah.
looks sort of sketch.
So now that we're talking social media, tell me a little bit about some of your exciting projects because I know you're like bursting at the seams with new stuff that you're going to get involved with.
Oh, yeah, I'm really excited. And with social media, I think there's a huge opportunity for musical engagement, educational engagement. And not just like Mozart was born in this year. Here's a picture of him, but like
Yeah.
literally like get on TikTok and show us how to string a cello. Like show us how you the theme to Mozart 40, like, or
Yeah.
how do you move a harp, or how do you center. I mean, there's definitely that's sort of for me where I am really hoping to go. I've had so much fun teaching my students at University of Denver this year are actually adults. I mean, full-fledged, 28, 32 years old, very, very close to, to me. So,
Yeah.
um, what is so unique about this is, and sometimes challenging, is that there is this amazing personal sort of peer connection as well as a sort of a relevance in terms of like teacher student. Like, yeah, I literally just was doing this last month, so or I
Right.
remember, yeah, the first time I just walked into my first job 2 years ago, whatever. Yeah, like let's talk
Right.
about that because it's fresh. Um, I love that. And the times when I'm now I will say I'm my own worst enemy actually when it comes to posting, because I get really stuck in, imposter syndrome and all that, and like, who cares, nobody cares, like, shut up, Grace. And then I'm like, no, it's good, I have something good to share and I'm going to share it,
Yes.
because it's not about
Yes.
me, it's about
Yep.
the music, it's about the art, it's about I'm a vessel, right? So
Yep.
in that sense, I really want to see how much I can do with this growing online harp audience. Truly, and my friend and longtime colleague and harp sister Cheryl Losey Feder and I, are starting a new podcast, Strung Together, and it's for this community. I mean, not exclusively, of course, but that harpists are. I mean, they're not just people who do it full time like me. There are people who like just go to work and do their regular day to day, and then they just come home and happen to take harp lessons and play some Gaelic music on the weekends. Like, another word for that is folk harp, lever harp. Yeah. So
Yes.
it's the littler harps. And, I do have students who play those instruments too. And
That's
I
cool.
don't want it to be like, oh, I don't play a pedal harp, or I'm not professional, so I don't deserve to hear this music or to study with you or whatever. And I just think that's crazy. I mean, like,
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter what level you're at. You don't have to apologize, you know?
Hmm.
I'm yeah, it's just like, where can we go together?
Exactly. So what is Strung Together going to be focusing on? What are you
Ooh.
most excited to kind of get into with it?
So, we are so fortunate to be part of a legacy of strong female of leaders, in who often take principal positions, as harpists, whether we're in an orchestra or performing as a soloist, or in the case of some of our interviewees, harpists who have really just been trailblazers in their own right, some of them in the jazz community. I mean, one person we're so excited to interview is Ann Hobson Pilot, who was the
Yeah.
right?
In Boston.
Yes,
Yeah.
just the most incredible story. She was not only the first woman in the Boston Symphony Orchestra, but the first a woman of color in the
Hmm.
orchestra, and just and even though we're now in a place where, yes, okay, it's 2021, like, we're moving forward, but obviously, as current events clearly shows us, we have a lot of work to do.
Hmm.
So what I'm excited about is that we're going to be able to really augment these stories, and sort of also demonstrate, and perhaps sort of discuss between each other how we can continue these movements going forward. I feel so
Hmm.
lucky to be privileged and to have a principal position, but I also know that there's a good chance I'm not getting paid as much as my male colleagues. And I also feel that
Hmm.
many times I'm not as respected as them.
Hmm.
And that is, again, no one's fault except really just the sort of patriarchy in our society. And that is something that's going to take a little longer to change. But again, the more that we celebrate and lift up these female voices, nothing against the patriarchy, but as what is it? I read this amazing book called Burnout recently. They talk about this, particularly in reference to the performing arts, and they say the best way to work sort of against the power of the patriarchy, in the sense that it, whatever, perhaps limits us, is to go after your something larger, to find that passion, and again, augment it and scream it
Yeah.
and celebrate it, and to be okay with taking up space. um
Yeah.
yeah. And and maybe airing out some of these conversations, and at the very least just learning from all the amazing people who are already going on their own journeys, and hearing about them and supporting them. So
Absolutely. It's very exciting. I think you're going to have a fantastic time. I'm sure there are many harpists dying to hear what you can pull together and interact with, and people that you can talk to. And people like Ann Hobson Pilot is a
Mm.
perfect example. She's incredible. And I remember watching her for years when I was in Boston, but I don't see her on the internet. I don't see her around. So she's like an unsung resource
Oh,
that will
yes.
be incredible to interact
I
with.
know. I also feel like it's at that point where we are the next generation. It's our job now, as you are
Mhm.
already so beautifully doing, to tell the stories of the people who make up this amazing, beautiful, rich world of musicians. And and then what I'm hoping to is that this will lead to eventually more in-person events, but that we can start to cultivate this community. Again, yes, of harpists, but of also just people who love, hearing stories about, music and artists and people overcoming
Yeah.
amazing obstacles in their life and paving the way for, new and exciting things. And that we could also have an educational component. So like maybe like a harp hangout where like every month, after we air the episode, we can invite the artist onto like a Zoom where we can really have a more intimate conversation, and also potentially like master classes. I mean, I am a huge fan of virtual teaching, if not in lieu of in person, but
Hmm.
there's a
In addition
lot
to,
in it.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot you can do. And so I that's sort of where I see this next chapter going. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting getting back to real life if and when that happens.
I think that this is a perfect example of a silver lining, a COVID silver lining, where maybe this opportunity like presented itself and now you're doing it, and you might have been too busy
Totally.
prior to. But once
Yep.
you get yourself situated, you'll be able to sustain it, and that's going to be really fulfilling.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, lots of silver linings.
Thank you so much for this. This was fantastic. We're really excited about your new podcast, and we get to keep up with you.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I am so excited to get to just to have this conversation with you. It was such a delight, and your enthusiasm is just so contagious. And I can't wait to, continue to follow you, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person sometime. Wouldn't that be
I know.
fun?
Can't wait. That would be
I feel
awesome.
like I already know you. Like
I know, same. That's the beauty of all of this technology is there is an opportunity for connection. Even if it's not the same, it's still there.
oh, absolutely. Here, here.
Thank you for joining us on Inside the Notes. Be sure to visit InsideTheNotes.com for additional content from our artists and guests, and click subscribe to stay up to date on future interviews. Until next time, this is your host, Erica Block.